You've just tuned into Inner Station, where the latest and hottest topics are always on air. I'm your host, Cami, and each episode we serve up heat with fun chats, fire insights, and special guest appearances with some surprises along the way. So, UNESCO has dubbed 2025 the International Year of Quantum Science and Technology, recognizing 100 years since the initial development of quantum mechanics. And one conversation that we've seen going around that is really big right now is AI. But something that is about to take over that space is quantum computing. And if you don't know what that is, don't worry, neither did I. But we have invited Kofi Oppong. Did I say that right, Kofi?
Mhm. Yes, that's
Oh,
great.
awesome. Who is the founder of Urban MBA, to school us on what quantum computing is and how it is about to shake up not just the future of work, but the foundations of life as we know it. Welcome to Inner Station, Kofi.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Cam.
Of course, I'm so glad to have you, and I'm very excited for the conversation that we are about to have. But before we get into that, tell us a little bit about who Kofi is and what fuels your inner fire.
That's an interesting question. So, I originally am sports mad. I came through life in sport that sort of dictated all my life for me. So, if you're asking me what sorts of fueled my fire, it originally began with all these sporting aspects and actually led me to where I've sort of got to with Urban MBA. So I learned through sport how to set goals, etc.
Yeah.
Short term and long term. And it's one of those things that you don't realize that is happening at the time, but it then made the world make more sense to me, which is why in so many aspects of charities and youth work, sport is a big part of what people do. The other thing that also fuels me a lot is the lack of understanding of how the world works by just general people.
Yeah.
So it feels like for me a world where your eyes, somebody's pulled the light over your eyes and you don't really know what's sort of happening around you. And one of the books I read when I was growing up was called What I Should Have Learned in School But Never Did, by an Australian entrepreneur called Jamie McIntyre. And in this book, it goes and covers things like the Fed Reserves, how they got into power, all sorts of things. And this type of information is really invaluable. And I felt that, or I feel that everybody needs to understand all of those things, because a lot of what's seen in the world isn't really what's going on. And you have a small pocket of people who run the world, and 95% of us are, in a sense, in poverty, with all this sort of going to the top. So those that gave me, and you're saying what fuels me, that gave me a feeling of injustice, and that we need to do a lot more to make sure everybody's aware of what's going on, so that we can really contribute properly to the world, because not having all that information means you can't contribute properly. Another thing, so I combine the two in terms of sport and injustice, makes me who I am, I think. I'm also looking at, from the community that I'm from, which is the Black community, how much injustice has been done over 100 years, not just now. And we don't seem to be able to get out of it or have a proper footing in this globe and what happens. And in every area that you look at, we are the majority in poverty. So those three things fuel who I am and what I sort of strive for. Sport is my release for all the hassles of running a charity. I'll give you an example. This weekend, it's the Japanese Grand Prix, so I'm going to be up early morning doing that. I'm an Arsenal fan for all my sins, so I will be watching Arsenal as well a lot over the next coming weeks, because we've got Real Madrid and it's a massive game. So that gives me that sense of release, but it's the three things combined sort of make me who I am.
And Kofi, you mentioned sort of being driven by also like the sense of injustice that you got from reading that book, right? And one of the vehicles that you use to sort of address that is Urban MBA. Can you tell us a little bit about the story behind how you got started with that, and sort of what the intention is behind the institute?
Yes, so it does follow on from that in terms of I feel that the problems in our community generally are problems because we don't think far ahead enough in terms
Mm.
of where the world is going and what we are doing and how we can impact it. What tends to happen with our community is we're always the end users and the buyers, right?
Yeah,
That is clearly shown that we spend the most money out of any other
we do. We do.
um, we do. Right. And what I want to do is sort of turn the turn it on its head is the best way just to describe it, and make sure that we are trying to provide services, or we will be providing services that take into account the future. Now, it's
Mhm.
important than ever before because we're in the fourth industrial revolution, and we've
Yeah.
been in it for about 15, 20 years. And the speed of technology brings great opportunity, and those great opportunities can be dealt with now if we understand what is happening and prepare better. Whenever I've looked at history, what tends to happen is that every industrial revolution brings those new people, new technologies, and new ways of work. There is a movie called, or a series called The Men Who Built America.
Mm.
In that series, it looks a lot at the JP Morgans of the world, the Andrew Carnegies, and
Yeah.
that revolution that's happening in America and how a lot of them got to power. But there's always a shift. And there's a guy in there called Cornelius Commodore, and his family, Vanderbergs, his family is still around now.
Yeah.
Just not as rich as they were. Having said that, all the others are. Now, that time, America was obviously coming out of its revolution, and things like ships were being used for e-commerce. But all of a sudden, they were building train lines. Now,
Yeah.
Cornelius Commodore decided to get rid of all of his ships and gamble purely on the train lines that were coming, and it made him a billionaire because he knew it was going to cut down
Mm.
how you ship stuff in half. And that's an example of what happens in these times. Something like that's going on, and
Yeah.
those people that react to it properly tend to make the money. But what you've also seen is that those that came from that era are called the first entrepreneurial rock stars. And
Yes.
what they've done is they've continued to be in those positions of power because they can always see when there's another revolution's happening, and they're always
Yeah.
invested in all of those companies that are about to go stellar with it. It doesn't mean they then have to be involved in it because they made their money at their time. But what they
Yeah.
can do is use their money to be in the next revolution by being involved in all the companies that will be there. And so their power is never, ever given up, and they continue to be in that circle.
Mhm.
And so we need to think about how we do that, especially in this time, because we've never had an industrial revolution like it. It's the biggest change we're ever going to have. And I want to prepare the next generation to understand it now, be ready for it, and to
Yeah.
be contributing in it, because that's the only way, as one of my fires I was talking about, that if we want to move the Black community on, we have to understand these areas and also how to invest. So Urban MBA is an educational company. We teach level 6, level 3 enterprise. And we do it by making sure, first and foremost, that it tackles the problems that happen in education as it stands, which is education tends to be teaching older subject matter.
Yeah.
Younger people are not engaging with education as much. There's been a bigger problem with neurodiversity, and you see
Right.
this in the fact that a lot of entrepreneurs are the dyslexics of the world, and all of
Yeah.
that they had to learn in a different way. So it's interesting that most of those are the ones that didn't get along with school who are creating the
Yes.
big businesses. So I look at the problem with school in a couple of areas. Is that in particular 0 to 7 is the main time that you can influence a child. After 7
Mhm.
years old, they tend to start making their own decisions about what's going on in life, and you have less of
Yeah.
an influence on them. So that particular area is really important. What we see in the UK in terms of with school is that Black men in particular start dropping off the rails around the age of 13. Now, the
Mm.
problem with that is that there's no male role models within the curriculum in schools, and nothing
Yeah.
about talk or anything else. And so that's why they start disengaging. Then there's a third period that when they go to the career advisor day, at the end of their time in school, they're told they're not worth anything, and it's unlikely that they can get higher education.
Yeah.
So those things compound the problem. Then we have another issue in that to get higher education, it's really expensive. And
Yeah.
in the UK, Oxford and Cambridge, which are the top two schools, obviously get most of their students from 9 schools in the UK. The most famous one being Eton, which is where a lot of the royal families, etc., go to. We obviously have other universities, etc., that people can go to, but the cost and the expense is too much for most of the people from my community or our communities, and we need to offer an alternative. When we do offer an alternative, it has to be, as I said, being able to create a look to the future and have a different type of curriculum. So one of the things that we do, as an example in our courses, is that it's all about storytelling. We tell stories. That's the best way to learn. You being African, you understand what I mean. Our stories are taken down all the way through. So every single one of our curriculums has a theme and a story, which makes it easier for them to remember. We also teach them about themselves. So a lot of it's around neuroscience. Nobody gets to learn about business until they do the first part of the course, which is about yourself. So these are things like learning whether you're more left brain or right brain dominant, because it has a slight picture on whether you're creative or not. All of those things you need to understand. We go as far as teaching brainwave patterns, because it's really important that this generation learns and understands about meditation and mindfulness, where these things can stop mental health in a big way, and they're not talked about in school. So we teach all of that stuff involved in it before they even get to the business part. And as an example of the first curriculum, just to show you very quickly, is that we do goal setting, where they have to do vision boards about where they're going to be maybe 15 or 20 years in the future. And then they have to do a medium set of goals, which is how they're going to get there, and the short-term goal, which is what do you need to do now in order to get started on that path. So that became what Urban MBA is really about. And I feel that as we go forward, because of the amount of automation coming, whether it's from robots or products like, even when you look at Deliveroo and Uber, they're all automated services in a way now, but they're going to get a lot stronger, much more automated, which will leave us a lot more time on our hands, and so less jobs on our hand, because there's going to be a shortage of jobs. And we don't know what jobs are going to be created yet. So I believe that everybody will probably need to be some form of entrepreneur. So that's how it works in terms of Urban MBA. We run 6 weeks, 12 weeks, 1-year courses, primarily focusing on enterprise. And then we also look at what jobs are coming and help people who are going to be employed to then understand the real jobs that are going to be there, so they can skill up for those.
And I think one of your focuses at Urban MBA is sort of preparing for like this, or not preparing, but like finding ways that we can function in the 4th industrial revolution, especially with a lot of the changes happening so rapidly. And one thing that is going to contribute a lot more to that is quantum computing. And with this being the International Year of Quantum, can you briefly explain to us what quantum computing is?
And that is such a hard subject to explain, because people are not aware of what it is and how it may change things. So, okay, so quantum computers obviously are a new type of computer and very different to classical computers. Now, the way classical computers work are ones and zeros, and it can only do one or the other. With quantum computer, what's happening is there are millions and billions and trillions of atoms all around us, and everything that we know, whether it's from a cup to you, is made out of atoms. So that's where quantum computers, your first thinking is that we are manipulating atoms that are around us that we cannot see at this precise time. Now, these atoms, when observed, and this was a study done a little while ago, they actually change particles and change it to wave particles and different things once they're observed, which made people realize that they were sentient, and they knew when they were being observed. Um,
Yeah.
so an atom is made up of electrons, neurons, um, and protons, and those are the things that are manipulated by lasers or light, depending on what sort of quantum computer you have, to then do work for us. And to explain how that why quantum computers are so much faster and better is that they work on these things called qubits, which is basically an atom and how many atoms they can manipulate. So right now there are a certain level of qubits, which is just how many atoms they can manipulate at a time. And so the more that grows, the more it becomes more powerful. But to give you an understanding, there's a clip in the Avengers movie when they're having the final fight with Thanos, where Doctor Strange multiplies himself in the fight against him. Now, when he multiplies himself, he's obviously trying to get rid of Thanos, but Thanos then finds the real Doctor Strange, and then the others all disappear.
Yeah.
If we relate that to quantum, and I asked a classical computer to maybe go around a room with 100 people and find somebody who's called Jane, it will go to each person until it reaches Jane and then says, here's your answer.
Yeah.
Right. So it obviously does it a lot faster than us in terms of making that decision. But if I had a quantum computer, the atom would multiply and go to each person and find the answer to that a lot quicker than what a classical computer would do. And that's so much more faster because it multiplies itself and exists in more than one place at a time. That is what's called superposition, because a quantum computer can multiply itself in the same way I just described with Doctor Strange. So what it can do then is that Google just did 5 minutes worth of work with their quantum computer that they said a normal supercomputer, not a normal classical, a supercomputer, which is a network of computers together, would take a septillion to do. Right. And I can't even tell you how many zeros that is at the end of what a septillion is, but that just shows you the power of what's coming. In 5 minutes, it would do enough work that would equate a supercomputer, maybe 15 or 20 generations of us would be able to do. And that's why it is such an important technology. It also will mix and change a lot of other technology like AI. So if we start using AI at quantum level, there is a lot of interesting things that could happen.
Yeah. And I think right now we're also fascinated with like just AI and how that's been developing. And I think because the average person has no idea that like quantum computing even exists. It's insane, just the scale of like what's actually coming. And with it being expected to become the next big conversation that we're going to have, how prepared would you say that we are from like a business perspective and then just a workforce perspective as well for the sort of onset of quantum computing into everyday things?
Well, I think not even on a business sense, I think what we could be seeing is multiple things that we know, from health to all these things being solved. A quantum computer could read every single hieroglyph from the past, right? We're always talking about our history. So we're about to find out more about our history than we've ever known, which might be even more scary.
It is.
Other the beliefs that we think are there, we might find are no longer real, right?
Yeah.
And that means people's lives might completely and utterly change. There is a whole load of people that don't believe there's anything to do with God, Jesus Christ, and that we came from elsewhere. We're going to find those answers out very soon, whether these things are true or not, by even reading stuff back all the way to the Egyptian time periods and all these codes that we've never been able to break. And so many people believe that this stuff is we already have the answers with quantum computers, but we have to bring it in slowly because of how fundamentally it will change what we believe. So we're not even talking about business here, which was your question. We're just talking about general life. Quantum is going to have a massive impact on the way we are. But we soon should be able to cure things like cancer because we're talking about cellular level right there. All of those things should be able to come out of a quantum computer as we go forward. So fundamentally, everything that we know will change, not
Yeah.
just business, the way we view things. We might develop a fantastic new field where we know we're going towards hydrogen. We might find different ways because quantum computers are also making different periodical table elements. And so things that,
That's
these
insane.
things, it's endless. And that's why I'm not really stuck to just the business side of things. What I'm
Yeah.
talking about here is that what we know as life is going to fundamentally change because of
Mhm.
these new technologies, AI being one of them, but quantum being the absolute top one. And you're asking about lack of knowledge. If you see the UNESCO website, it called out for everybody to start sharing this information because
Yeah.
people don't know what's about to hit them. So they're trying to get this information out there around this 100 years of quantum. And
Yeah.
we've done a quantum hackathon where we use this the type of thing that I was talking to you about in terms of Marvel,
Mhm.
etc., to help make people understand and to get our young people from our community excited about it. When
Yeah.
they can get involved in this stuff now early, it's a great time period because then you're going to be involved with all these scientific breakthroughs that are going to happen and the changes as well in life. So long way of answering your question, but businesses don't have a clue because right now they're occupied with AI. That's
Yeah.
the first thing that's the first thing on their mind. How do they deal with their workforce with AI? I'm about to do a
Yeah.
workshop on AI for an organization in the UK, and they've just told me that they are going towards a 4-day work week, which is all being predicted that this is likely to happen because of this industrial revolution, and we're
Right.
not even ready for that type of thing as yet.
And I think that's the thing, right? That's the scary but exciting thing about this particular conversation is you have this thing that's coming in that none of us are prepared for really, but it's going to shift so many things, and so many changes are coming in. And like you said, like from a business perspective, we're still very much trying to navigate AI. So I think it is a little bit scary to think that like AI is AI is already giving us a run for our money.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
have quantum computing is about to like make a lot of things redundant. A lot of things are going to become obsolete, and that's a scary reality, right?
yeah,
And I think as much as it's going to change the world of business, I think they also just in with stuff like AI, especially in the edu space, you find that they are falling behind on that front in terms of like educating people and sort of getting that integrated into the education system anyway. So how do you think that education needs to change so that people are sort of skilled and employable for things like the inception of like quantum computing?
yeah. So I think when we're looking at things like that, Cam, the first thing we've got to do is what are the problems of education? I think maybe we
Yeah.
should look at first and foremost. So the problems of education are, for me, very clearly, is you have 45 students in a class and one teacher.
Yeah.
Right? So that's first and foremost. The
That's
teacher
already,
cannot
yeah.
give the student enough time. Secondly, they're not talking about this stuff now, and only now are they saying we need to have AI in schools. It's very
Yeah.
obvious that students, and we've been teaching them this for over 12 months now, 18 maybe right to the beginning, you can change your CV very quickly now. Cover
Yeah.
letters, etc., were a nightmare for me when I remember when I was looking for jobs
Yes.
in terms of what you have to tailor it all together. We show them how to put this stuff on AI, and the AI will then tailor your skills as best as it can towards the job that you're applying for. So it will
Right.
do that. It will then also write you a cover letter and highlight your strengths, and you can do
Mhm.
that now in 10 minutes. So you can apply
Yeah.
multiple jobs. And for a much more neurodiverse group of people coming through, dyslexia and all those things no longer matter. Right.
Right.
Yeah. So you've got to,
Exactly.
it no longer matter because it will write, even if you write in your dyslexia style with an AI computer, it recognizes what you've said and
Exactly.
it will do that for you. So what we
Yeah.
then have is a tool that can potentially help all of them. So one, the problem is that teachers haven't got enough time, and some of these will help people do things quicker. The
Yeah.
second that we have is that education isn't keeping up. So there's been the whole riot for 2 years of whether AI is going to make people dumb, should it be allowed in school, etc. So I'm going to give you an example of a student that we had, not a student, a lady that works with our charity asked if
Mhm.
her daughter could come and do some work experience with us. We taught
Yeah.
her to use Claude. Now, she has mental health, and typical of somebody who's got neurodiverse issues around this
Yeah.
time, she doesn't get up on time. So
Mhm.
we used to say, come in, and she would give me a message about 11, 12 o'clock saying, I've only just woken up, and then turn up at 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So I was aware that that was going to happen by her mum, so it was okay.
Yeah.
But because she suffered from mental health, there were going to be also some problems in terms of potentially, as she went to school later on, what
Mhm.
stress her. Recently, I had a report from her mum saying that she's getting all top distinctions in school and her
Oh
mental health
wow.
right down. Why? Because she learned to use AI while she was here, and it's helped her to do her stuff quicker and deliver
Yeah.
and not feel so stressed under the pressure of deadlines that universities usually give you. And so that's an
Right.
example of how some of this stuff can help, even with somebody at that who her mum was really worried about going to
Yeah.
university. We're also seeing whole schools being opened up, only being taught by AI. So they're using glasses. Yeah, there's 2 or 3 in the UK, and they're looking at that at the moment. So even schooling is going to change in this way, where there's going to
Oh.
be more. Yeah, there you might have to research them, but there's 2 or 3 schools in the UK who have started using just AI as teachers. They're alternative schools, I'll admit, but that is
Mhm.
starting to happen. So we're going to have to look at what role will AI play in terms of teaching kids in the future in schools,
Yeah.
and how many schools or how many teachers do we need, and do we need schools in even the same way that we currently have them? All of those
Right.
things are going to be questions that we need to pose over the next 5 or 10 years as to what an actual school looks like, because of all these technologies and how they impact me, you, and the generations below. Another technology such as Neuralink, as an example, Elon Musk is putting these chips in people's heads. Imagine
Yeah.
if Neuralink is developed and it's a little small thing that you put at the back of your head that can then upload all information like the Matrix into your head. Then what?
Mhm.
Right? And the reality is, these are the types of things, as crazy as they sound, that we have to think of in terms of what our futures could look like. Now, some people have answers to this because they know where the technology is going, but we have to look at all of those problems, like too many teachers. I'm sorry, too many students to teachers, and figure out the best way to be able to develop that, and then how we can use technology to alleviate the problems that we currently are seeing in school.
And I think that is sort of, I like that you highlighted positive, like the positives of what these things could do for people, right? Because I think everybody at the moment is sort of nervous about, okay, we're not going to be skilled, and then we're going to lose our jobs, and then nobody's going to be able to get a job, and. But it's like, I think if the earlier people like get to learn to use these tools, the better, because then we're able to sort of be empowered, and then you can be, because I mean it still needs somebody to run the thing, right?
Yes.
So you still, yeah, so the more jobs you're able to get, the more skilled you're able to get in terms of utilizing these tools, then it positions you better to be able to sort of go into the future of work, which actually is a segue into my next question, right? Wanted to sort of get from you what your perspective is on sort of the future of work and what that looks like, especially because one thing that you focus on at Urban MBA is upskilling. And this isn't just for sort of your employees, it's also for getting entrepreneurs to come in, students and everyday people, to give them the skills that they need to be able to prepare for this future workspace.
Yes. So in terms of potential jobs, they said there's going to be a shortage of 400 million jobs.
Wow.
400 million was the last, that's across the globe, and that's on the World Economic Forum, so you can check that out.
Yeah.
In terms of what that looks like, upskilling is going to involve you needing to know something about data. Data is
Mhm.
a for one thing. I've said we're going to bring it back to quantum as an example, which is right now a lot of people are worried about cybersecurity because of quantum, and you're going to
Yeah.
you will start seeing so many jobs around for cybersecurity, people moving into that. So when we have students and they're looking for jobs, one of the things that they always used to give here as a great easy way of getting a job is what they call, I believe it's an SIS card. I can never remember what it is, which is your security pass. And the young people get jobs as security guards on the doors of clubs, bars, and all of those types of things.
Yeah.
Now, first and foremost, a lot of those are going to be replaced by robots soon, and different types of means of getting in that you won't need that. But the jobs coming are in cybersecurity, so we point them towards those cybersecurity educational areas that can then help them to get into those areas. So we have to look at how the jobs are coming out and then prepare them for that. But you're going to need, it's the people who can run the computers or the data that are more likely to have jobs. And when you're doing entrepreneurship, you really do have to look at your data too. So you start understanding these types of things, whether it's the analytics of your website and you're looking at tracking information, that might be your first start. But also, how can you get AI to give you data that you can manipulate? And that's what a lot of things are going to be about as well. When you get data from different areas, what do you do with it and how do you utilize it? So with the shortage of jobs, the first things that we need to do is look at what jobs are coming out of these sectors. Now we have 9 that we feel are going to create a lot of the jobs out there, and we're saying look for jobs in those sectors. So it could be coding, 3D printing coding. We know that's going to increase by a certain amount. We know that data entry jobs are increasing because more people want to understand the data, and we have to put them into those first initial areas because there isn't enough information about what jobs are going to be created with these new areas yet. And so that's why the shortage is there. So we have a bit of a problem is that nobody's predicted what those jobs are going to be, but we know that they're going to be around those 9 areas. So the first thing is to help them understand what these technologies are, and then how they can utilize those for what jobs are in those industries. And that's how we do it.
Sure. That is a lot to digest. Like my mind is like, oh my gosh. I think it is important that to note that sure, some of these jobs haven't been predicted yet because everything is still unfolding. I mean, we're living this in real time. But having information like knowing things like, okay, these are the sectors where there's going to be a lot of development, so look in that area. And this is how you can, even now in your own industry, sort of use these skills and apply them here. This is how you can upskill in this area to make sure that you are prepared for that wave of when things happen. In one of our previous conversations, Kofi, you had mentioned that things like universal income and side hustles but that something like universal income, just off the back of these new jobs that are coming in, might have to be a thing that is implemented globally, right? And you've also mentioned that things like side hustles will become a necessity. It's no longer just oh, I want a side hustle. It will become necessary for you to have multiple things going on. Some people might be opposed to this, like with everything. Can you explain why it is necessary, or things like that will become necessary, and then also sort of the impact that something like quantum computing could have on the wealth gap in particular? One of our previous conversations, you had mentioned that things like universal income might have to be sort of implemented off the back of all of the changes that are coming in the workforce, and also that things like side hustles will become a necessity because you might need to absolutely sort of supplement your income, right? I want to find out from you why you think that this is going to be a necessity, and then also sort of the impact that something like quantum computing will have on the wealth gap as well.
Okay, so to first answer your question, Yves, you have to always look at what's going on around the globe. There are over 50, 60 countries testing the universal basic income. So that tells you something.
Yeah.
That tells you something. Alaska has the one that's used it maybe the most. There is a form of universal basic income even in Saudi Arabia and all those countries, if you look at the way that they operate. But Alaska have extra oil money, and they asked what they should do in terms of the people, and they all ask for a basic income. And so
Yeah.
what then happens is they get a monthly income, and they're probably the best example to use of what could happen in that way. Now, interestingly enough, when studies have been done and looked at what happens when these people know that every single month they probably have just enough to cover maybe their rent or below that, so they don't have to think about how they cover their rent so much, is that mental health has gone down a hell of a lot in those countries. So
Right. Yeah.
that's very interesting from that perspective. The second perspective to look at is that we were always entrepreneurs, because there was no such thing as money at a particular time in our life, and it was an exchange of values. And these exchanges of values has been superseded because money has become the thing that we've used, and for that it's meant that money is in certain people's hands. They can dictate what happens with the world. Now, if we're going to have 400 million job shortages, and we don't know what those jobs that are going to be created will do to look at that, it means there's going to be a shortfall somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And that's why this universal basic income is being tested by multiple countries, because they know it's happening. And I always say, you've got to follow, if you're looking at technology, you've got to follow where the money is. If you're looking at where the world's operating, you've also got to look at what's being said, because people aren't telling the truth of what's being said. And if you go onto places like the World Economic Forum, it will tell you there's going to be a job shortage, because unlike every previous industrial revolution, this is the one where we can be replaced by things like robots. Now, whether you take Elon Musk seriously or do not like him or not, he has a great track record of selling things, and he believes he's going to be selling 1 million robots a year soon. So we're going to have robots serving us in our house. Robots. I went to Saudi Arabia to do a talk at a LEAP event when I went to do tech education, and there were already robots serving in some of the restaurants. Then we've got cleaning robots now. So those people who are cleaners, technically we won't need them unless you know how to run the robots that do the cleaning. So that means as 10 people's jobs gets reduced to 1, right? And these are the things that we're talking about and why we need to do that. So if we add all of those things in, it means that we have to become entrepreneurial to earn money, because there's a good chance that most of the stuff that we do as jobs will have changed. I'll give you another quick example of that. Is all the students that were going to university used to rely on cashier jobs at Tesco's and all of those things here in the UK. I'm not sure what it's like in South Africa, or but it's what it used to take them through. They no longer exist already now, right? We're seeing that you've got one cashier maybe, and all the other ones are self-serve. At Amazon Fresh, which is the store that has no cashiers at all, and you just go in and pick up the stuff and walk out, because all of these things are happening, and all of those supermarkets that we know are all preparing their own versions. So that's an example. So what's happened to them? They've now become Deliveroo drivers. The students who were cashiers have become Deliveroo drivers. But we also know that drones are about to deliver food, as they deliver food in China, and sooner or later drones are going to deliver the food, which means that's going to be the end of that area for those people that are doing that. So my point is, all of these things are going to be, so if you're going to have some form of employment, then it is likely that it will be your own small business that you're going to be running. And that's why everybody needs to think about it, because there isn't anything at the moment that we do that cannot be done by a robot or better. And so what they're saying then is, how we survive is our critical thinking skills, and our creativity is going to be the difference between us and the robots. Well, that's very fine, but that doesn't deal with the jobs fully. It doesn't deal with the jobs fully. So creatives, and we're all going to become creative, we're all going to become artists. How does that work? And that's how we need to be looking at it and thinking about it, and that's why people need to become entrepreneurs, because that's how they're going to earn money. What should really happen, Cam, if the world was operating as one, and we didn't have all these factions, and Mr. Trump wasn't doing what he was doing, and we could all work together, is that this should allow us to become the best of us.
Right.
We should have everything automated that we don't want to do. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And then we can really start developing ourselves, even from 0 to 7, that schooling level is that everybody should be able to try everything. Right.
Yeah.
So then you become creative, but you become creative because you've been given a chance to be a pianist. You've been given a
Mhm.
chance to be an artist. You've been given a chance. These opportunities aren't really given to people at that time, but now is a chance that we get the best people in those areas because they're not forced to do other things that just
Yeah.
earn money. And so we could become the best of humanity if it wasn't
Mhm.
controlled by this little level of people. And this is the opportunity for us to start doing that. These technologies have got the capabilities of solving poverty, hunger
Yeah.
across the globe, right? So
Yes.
if we manage to do that, then how much better would the world be? And we can focus on better things. We should be able to eliminate all the horrible things in the world because are doing all the things that we love and we're just happy people. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, technology is not the enemy, it's the people who wield it. And that's the problem.
Exactly.
That's the
Yeah.
problem, right? So
That really is the problem.
because as far as I see, I'm excited about not doing that. But you cannot control whole countries if they're not in poverty cap. Yes,
That's true.
you
Exactly.
can't control people if they're not in poverty. You can't
Yeah.
control people if they're not in distress. Yeah, you can't control people if they're happy and don't need you, right?
Right.
And that's the whole thing. And so a lot of the elements that we're seeing in there is about power and people's
Mhm.
power at the top. So what we should become, um, there should be a mandate for us to be all working together as a group to do that. But unfortunately, it won't, and it will come out of all these small areas. But it then gives us this chance now that we're going to have more time on our hands is how do we structure what we do with our life? How do we
Mhm.
structure and become more positive about doing all of these things? And that for me is the scary thing and why we've created things like Urban MBAs, because we want them to think about that. Right, that's
Yeah.
what they have to think about that. How can we become better? And then we can eliminate a lot of this stuff. But if we also know what's coming, we can then fight back against it to
Right.
ensure that we go towards that area. And if you're on the spiritual side, Cam, people keep
Mhm.
talking about this is an awakening time period. I mean,
Yes.
the world feels like at the moment it is just full of rubbish.
Yeah.
Right, people are feeling it everywhere. There's pressure, prices on food are going up. Yet we're at a time period where we're about to get technologies that could eliminate every negative thing in our life. How is
Yeah.
that possible? And I think those are the questions that people need to start asking. How is that possible that at this time, when everything could be solved, we're actually fighting the other way
Yeah.
and can't work out what's going on? We've got tariffs, dictation, more fighting across the globe on religion. And those are the things that I'm hoping will be eliminated when these technologies come along and we can
Mhm.
see how these things, and that's why people need to be given access to it
Yes.
across the globe, because then we can solve these problems. But in those small pockets of hands, it's very
Mhm.
unlikely, in my opinion, after reading books like Jamie McIntyre's How People Go Well, and how a lot of these money people are power hungry. It's not
Yeah.
about money, it's more about power, right? But
Right.
I'd like to see the DRC never have to worry about people ripping them off on minerals. You know,
Exactly.
yeah, I would like to not see young kids having to go down and pull minerals out. That should be done by robots, and the DRC should control it and make their money. But these,
Yeah.
yeah, this is that we need to think a bit bigger. And I'm sort of
Mhm.
preaching and standing on a soapbox here, but the reality is that we have the opportunity. That's the
We
reality.
do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
We really do. Yeah.
yeah, we got to try and take it, whether it's a spiritual awakening or not. This is the time to really push for these types of things, and that's what watching too much of TV and all these things takes you away from, because you're not clear
Mhm.
in your thinking, right? There's too much stuff out there that's making people think negatively and trying to fight for their small pockets when it's actually
Yeah.
the biggest time of abundance and the
Yeah.
opportunity to do much more. And with clear thinking, a lot of this other stuff doesn't matter.
Exactly. And that's why I was so excited to sort of have this conversation, because just even in our intro session, I got so excited about the whole thing. I told anybody that would listen leading up to recording day, I was like, guys, do you know that this is happening? Like,
Yeah.
are you aware?
Yeah.
Because, yeah, you do see a lot of, I mean, I follow a lot of like the spiritual stuff and the
Yeah.
spiritual conversations that have been happening online. But yeah, to know that, like, because you are right, there is a lot of sort of things tend to lean a little bit more negative, and I think it's just how everybody is feeling right now.
Yeah.
But it definitely does feel like things suck right now because we're literally on the edge of something, and your perspective, having a positive perspective about that, really does open you up to seeing how you can get in, where you can fit in, versus when you lean into the negative, then you just start to feel like, oh, you sort of lose hope, and that's not good. But yeah, this conversation is so important, and I really really hope that like people hear this and it's not just a conversation that we're having and we're all nodding and then everybody goes away and they do nothing with this
Nothing about it.
information, like
Well,
again
I mean, just giving you the whole thing on Urban MBA, we're trying to disrupt education, which hasn't changed for 100 years. People call
yeah.
me mad. You know, you will never
Mhm.
do it. They will never allow you to. Well, let me just point out a couple of things. One, it has to change because of technology, as I've mentioned to you. There's
Exactly.
no going away from it.
It has
So
to, yeah.
if there is going to be a time, this is the time to. Three, if
Mhm.
I believe that you can never change this thing, then I shouldn't be living or even try and do this. The problem is we have to try and change it, and we need to have the
Yeah.
courage to change it,
Yeah.
because otherwise we don't move forward. And for me, I think everybody needs to think about what is the best of them.
Yeah.
I think this is the best of me. What I can do here might be the best, and if I achieve that, I can go to bed, I finish my life happy that I've managed
Yeah.
to make one thing very influential in the world. Now, everybody has that in the cap. The
Yeah.
problem is that they've been told, sideswiped, moved into all sorts of things that distract them from ever becoming what they really could be and how we could really change. And that's what's important for us to remember as well. So I might be
Yeah.
talking about all this tech stuff and everything else, but at the end of the day, every individual does their bit. There will
Yeah.
be the other issues later.
Exactly. And what you just said reminds me of a meme that I saw online with this one girl. She was like, we're all living on a rock and it's floating in space, and that's incredible. And you're worried about a bill. Like, do you not understand the gravity of like what it means to even be alive? And I think that's the thing, is because there's so much going on, everybody's so worried about just trying to live, really, you know.
Yeah.
We are very much distracted, and I think we're all sort of losing touch with what it really is about, like what it really means to be alive, and that everybody sort of has a purpose for being here, and that's what we need to be focused on, right? And things like AI and things like what's happening in tech are really just here to help us along on that journey, versus the journey being about those things. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, this has been such a great conversation, Kofi. And before I let you go, I would love to play a little game with you. We
Okay.
have a game here on an station that we call Hot Takes. And how it works is I ask you a series of rapid fire questions, and then you just answer hot or not, depending on how you feel about the topic.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So how do you feel about Bukayo Saka becoming captain one day?
Oh, hot. That would be brilliant.
Oh,
But you know, we're talking about great people, and I know I'm going away from the question, but everybody loves him because he's a great guy, and that's why.
yes.
Yeah.
No, he really is. I'm not even like an Arsenal fan, but like I watch Arsenal games depending on who they're playing against, and I'm like, okay, Saka, go ahead.
Yes.
How do you feel about the book Atomic Habits by James Clear?
Oh, I've not read that yet. Atomic Habits by James.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people. It's basically one of like these self-help books, but I've seen a lot of great reviews about it. I haven't read it myself either yet, but I've seen a lot of great reviews about it.
Okay, maybe I'm going to look that up then. But if it's got atomic in it, I'm definitely interested. So you're doing that.
How do you feel about plot twists in movies that involve clones?
Mm, hot, because I'm under the impression that that's already doable.
No, I'm telling you, Kofi. I don't know if you watched They Clone Tyrone on Netflix, But I had like an existential crisis for like a couple of weeks. I was like, what if I'm the clone?
Yes, and yeah, I believe they, somewhere along the line, somewhere, and it's not for this discussion, but I've been told on authority that they've already done that.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
maybe it's hot then. I'll say hot.
yeah,
It's a hot subject.
it is. And how do you feel about Nike Dunks replacing the Air Max as the go-to? Is it hot or is it betrayal?
That would be betrayal.
Okay.
The Air Max is Nike, and Nike and Max are one.
Right?
And me coming from that area, yeah, that's betrayal, full stop.
But I don't know. I think everybody, what's happening is everyone sort of is like, "Oh, but the dunks look so cool. But the dunks look so cool in the way that you style them." But it's like, no, man.
No.
I'm like, stop that. The Air Maxes look cooler. How do you feel about the film Interstellar? Have you watched it?
No, which one's that one? Interstellar.
I also haven't watched it. I've heard people speak about it, and apparently it's a sci-fi film, and apparently it's really good. So I guess that's another recommendation for the
That's
list.
another recommendation. So I'm going to come back to you on those ones at some stage. Maybe we do another follow-up for now.
Please do, yes. And how do you feel about grind culture?
What culture, sorry?
Grind culture or like hustle culture?
Um, it's a tough one for me to. So I'm just supposed to give you hot or not.
Sorry, Kofi.
So I would say not on that, because at the moment what that culture means isn't them doing a side hustle that will become big. It's a problem that we see that's causing a lot of issues at that level, because it leads to the crab in bucket scenario, and there's a lot of stuff going on at that level. That they're making money in a different way and not always the best way. So it depends on what sort of hustle or what they're doing, and what it leads to.
Sorry, Kofi.
No problem. I lost
My
you.
connection, my connection just like died on me.
No problem. There you go.
So I'll ask that one again, and then we'll just top out like the part where lights went sideways. But please tell us, how do you feel about grind culture?
I think it's good that they're learning, but I want them to be doing it in the right things and not the negative ones that they use. Young people want money too quickly. They've never been taught to wait for delayed gratification. So that tends to be a problem, that they'll do whatever it takes to get money, and because they're all in the areas of poverty. So there are two sides to this. Obviously, sometimes you get really good people come through and go on to create some really cool things. But generally, when we're looking at what we'd call the suburbs or inner city, that culture tends to be a culture against the same people that they're operating with. So that's not a good thing. And I wish, for me, that a lot of these programs that sort of show it, glorify it, aren't used so much. In this country at the moment, they're having a debate about a program called Adolescence, and it's actually gone to MP level. So it's one for you maybe to what they've said, that this should be shown at school. I don't watch them type of things, but I'm on good authority. I've been told it's about that sort of culture, and lots of different issues that we're having in those areas. So it might be worthwhile watching, but I won't watch them because I think they glorify that stuff too much.
Yeah, and I think I agree, especially on the point that you made about like young people wanting money very quickly. And that's the thing that I myself am working to sort of get out of, because I think we see people, and people aren't necessarily always honest about like the journey, right?
Yes.
So you see a person and you admire them. I mean, I'm like, for example, I'm a big Beyonce fan, right? But it took Beyonce like upwards of a decade to become Beyonce, and then it took her 2 decades to become what she is now. Absolutely. And it's like, you want Beyonce level success, but like in 2 years.
Yes, and to create a secondary character as well. I mean,
exactly.
She's gone through all the mindset stuff She's like,
Exactly.
I couldn't do anything if I wasn't Sasha Fierce. So
Exactly.
you need techniques to be able to get to that level where you can put those things forward for you to perform. And you're correct. And that's the problem. People don't want to work for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah. Enough said. And how do you feel about pitch invaders for a selfie?
Pitch invaders first. What's that?
So pitch invaders would be like the people that run onto a soccer pitch to get like a selfie with their
Sorry,
players.
pitch invaders.
Yes.
Ooh, that's interesting. I would say not. Not. The reason I'd say not is because then it makes it difficult for everybody else in the future. If you run on, it means there's extra police that then come on to the whole thing and all of that. So yeah, I'm thinking that's not, if you're brave enough to be able to do that, I wouldn't be that brave.
I was about to ask you, are you planning a pitch invasion?
No, I wouldn't
You're
be
like,
that.
it'll be more police that'll make it harder. I'm like, what? And how do you feel about the concept sort of in movies where AI becomes self-aware?
That is only telling us what is exactly going to happen, unfortunately. Every movie that I have watched in the 80s and 90s with a technology is now here. I
Yeah.
want to repeat that to everybody, because sometimes when people are talking about this stuff and they're like, oh, I don't think it's going to get there. Tell me one technology that was around in the 80s and 90s that has not been discarded because it wasn't going to go anywhere. But I can remember watching Nano in Star Trek in 1992. We now have nanotechnology. I remember a guy called Bob Lazard talking about Area 51 and Element 115, and they were poo-pooing him and saying, oh, he's a liar, none of this. Now Element 115 is on the periodic table. How is that possible, right? He talked about it in 1980 something, right? Every single thing that we have watched from Tom Cruise Minority Report is now here, which suggests everything we are talking about on the future is also going to be here. And that is a reality people don't want to accept.
That is true. And I mean, when you speak about like movies being like predictive programming and all of that, people sort of look at you crazy. And it's like, no, but you're literally living in a movie that happened like 2 decades ago. Like, for real. You're living it now.
Honestly, I've got a list, Cam, and it's a great question you've asked me. I've got a list of movies where every single even Neuralink is in Star Trek Voyager. When they have this thing in the final episodes of Star Trek Voyager, when she goes and she brings the people home, she goes to get something that she puts into the shuttlecraft, and it's called a Neuralink. And I'm like, no way, right?
Wow.
Even that is in there, and it's an interface between her and the computer to run that, and what is new at the moment, an interface between what the guy can do at the moment and what he does in computer. There isn't anything. I've got a list, and I can show you every technology. What show
that is insane.
Yes.
You have to share that list, Kofi, because I'm definitely about to go down the rabbit hole.
All right. Well, it maybe shows how crazy I am, man. People are going to switch off now.
No. It's a good thing we left all the craziness for like the last bits of the episode. We've gotten all the important stuff. And yes, Kofi, that brings us to the end of our game, and of course the end of our episode. Thank you so much for being such a great guest and for giving such great insights today. And before I let you go, I want to know, do you have any sort of socials or anything that you would like for us to plug?
Yes, we are on LinkedIn as Urban MBA. So you will be able to find us on LinkedIn. You can follow what the company does and then sign up for our newsletter. As an example, we are Urban MBA _ on Instagram, and we are Urban _ MBA on Twitter. So you can find us. We're in all of that. Yeah, just like us, follow us. What we're trying to do is quite important. If you can as well, I always used to say, get told you don't say this, and donate to our charity. It will help another young person go through our course, and that's what we want to do the most.
Yeah, definitely. And we will definitely have all of that linked in the description box for you to find as well. Thank you once again, Kofi, for joining us today. And thank you at home for tuning in as well. We'll catch you in the next episode. Bye.
All right, thank you.